Hey, my name is Jared Moon, and I'm part of a group of underground athletes you've probably never even heard of before. We don't rely on fancy equipment for training, and most of us don't even have gym memberships. In fact, our motivation comes from within. You see, we have jobs, families, and responsibilities, but we still have big goals, and they aren't getting achieved at a global gym. For that reason, we have to do things differently. Our training has to be smarter. We don't have every piece of equipment known to man or a ton of time to train, and we don't need it, because we are achieving amazing things without it. So how do we do it? If you ask your average personal trainer or gym goer, they'd call us crazy. Yet we're seeing results better than most every single day. And it's happening by blending mental training with physical training and becoming an athlete. What we call, and welcome to, Garage Gym Athlete.
All right, going live. Give it a second, see if anybody hops on. I can't really tell, so I'm doing this live from my computer today as opposed to my phone. So we're going to try this out. What's up? A few more seconds, see if anyone else hops on. All right, we're going to be talking about, what's up, guys? A couple of you jumped on. All right, guys, so I'm going to be going over some quick and dirty stuff on wearables, fitness tracking, things like that, things you want to pay attention to and could be helpful for you. And so we will, if you guys have any questions, what's up, man? If you guys have any questions, let me know. Throw them in the chat, and we'll discuss it. But I want to talk about wearables because there's been a lot of stuff on wearables coming out lately, and I want to know what help you like in determining what you should be using, what you should be tracking, and all that good stuff. So wearables that we recommend here at Garage Gym Athlete, it doesn't have to be any particular one. It's more what can it do, things that I think are worth tracking. So anything that can track heart rate variability is really good. And then also resting heart rate, and then some sort of strain for the day, which is typically just heart rate. So the go-to right now, obviously we're big Whoop fans here. A lot of our athletes have a Whoop, but so I've been wearing a Whoop for almost 2 years. I'm actually taking a slight Whoop break right now to try some other wearables and test them out where I can get better recommendations on a few things. But Whoop is great. It provides a lot of those metrics. But the other things I wanted to let you guys know about, if you're not into the wearable thing, but you want to track some of this data, I've been playing with a lot of apps lately, and I have my phone up because I wanted to show you. There's or list it off. So there's one that's called HRV for training. That's really cool. So HRV, the number 4, and then training. And the reason that one is so cool, I think it might be like a $9 app or something like that. Not in the app world, it's not cheap, but compared to the hundreds of dollars that wearables cost quite easily, it's a great way to start tracking your heart rate variability. And it even kind of does what the Whoop does. So it compares your heart rate variability and your resting heart rate to kind of give you a readiness score for the day. Best part about it, it uses your camera on the back of your phone. So you just put your finger over, and that's how it tests your heart rate variability. And I was a little skeptical about the accuracy of it, but I have an Apple Watch and I have a Whoop, and I was comparing the heart rate variability it was getting from my camera on my phone across those two metrics. And so that app is really great, something that you guys should check out. And a big part of what I want to talk about today was, if you're going to be tracking heart rate variability, there are a lot of ways to get into it. So other wearables that I'm going to recommend, Apple Watch is good for some things, not great for others. Whoop is pretty good. And then the new one, which I haven't tried yet, but I'll be trying soon, is the Oura Ring. Seems like a direct Whoop competitor. And we've even had a bunch of people on the podcast recommend it. Like the sleep experts recently recommended that stuff on the Better Humanology podcast. And it's just a ring, and it's got some sensors in it. So pretty cool little device there. So those are the top 3 that I would be like recommending right now. And I've tried a lot. I mean, I've tried a bunch of different Fitbits. I've tried the Atlas. I tried a bunch of different stuff, but sometimes those things get too into the weeds of what they're trying to track. So let's talk about the metrics that you should be tracking. And like I said, you can do this with your phone. You want to be tracking your heart rate variability at a minimum. I think that that's way more beneficial than almost any other metric right now, just because you can get averages for the day. You can take it as many times as you want. You can find out what different things affect your heart rate variability, and it's a great indicator of how your body is reacting to stress. And the reason I like it is because if you have a heavy training load, obviously your heart rate variability is going to be lowered from that load. But likewise, if you had a really stressful week, that also factor, your body doesn't really know a difference in stress. You know, like whether that was a physical stressor or a mental stressor, your body's still going to react with lower heart rate variability. And those things are okay. You want to take those things into account. If you're having a really rough week, mentally, physically, emotionally, whatever the reason is, you might also need to limit training intensity. So I think it's a good idea to keep an eye on your heart rate variability. Now, data doesn't get useful until you have a long enough timeline. If you start tracking your heart rate variability this week and it's off by Tuesday, that's not really enough data for you to make any like training recommendations or whatever. But the HRV for training app is really helpful. Now on that, like if you're like, okay, what is heart rate variability? It's the difference. It's in milliseconds, the difference between each heart rate or heartbeat. So a lot of people think that your heartbeat, like if you have a heart rate that's 60 beats per minute, that it's beating once every second. That's not really true. Sometimes it'll take 1.5 seconds to beat, and then the next time it'll take 0.8 seconds, and then it'll take 0.5, and then it'll take 1.1 second, so on and so forth. That's how your heart actually beats. So the more consistent it is actually the worst. You have the lowest variability. And so that's what it is. And it's a good indicator of the battle between your nervous system, parasympathetic and sympathetic, basically. But there's a lot of research on it that suggests that it's a good indicator for training and training load. So I think that you should be tracking your heart rate variability over a long enough timeline. Too easy. Like 2 years ago when I first started wearing the Whoop, heart rate variability was kind of like this niche thing, and like only like elite endurance athletes were tracking it. Now it's so easy to track your heart rate variability with like I said, an app on your phone or Apple Watch or whatever. It's just really easy. So I think everyone in our training should start doing that just to see how different things react. You can keep it as gee whiz information for a little while, and then start to see if like a really hard day, either in training or in life, is affecting your heart rate variability. And another thing that a lot of people don't know, so I have an Apple Watch, and a lot of people don't know how to take your heart rate variability on command. And that's one thing I do like about the Apple Watch that I don't like about Whoop. So Whoop takes your heart rate variability while you're sleeping at night, and then you can't figure out you can't find out what it is at any other point in time during the day. It gives you that one reading, and that's it. That's all you're allowed to see. And that's kind of frustrating. I'm hoping that they change that in the future. With an Apple Watch, you can take a heart rate variability reading at any point in time that you want. So anyone with an Apple Watch who's wondering how you do that, there's an app on there called Breathe. It's the Breathe app, and you have to sit there and breathe for a minute. And I recommend that you actually sit there and do the breathing exercise. Just breathe for a minute. It will take a heart rate variability reading during that time frame. A lot of people don't know that. So if you want to know what your heart rate variability is right now and you have an Apple Watch, you can use that little feature, or you can use it first thing in the morning. And there are a lot of different ways that like that integrates with a lot of different apps that you could use. So that's one thing to check out if you want to start tracking heart rate variability. Other than that, resting heart rate is kind of, it's a good thing to track, but you want to try and get like lower and heart rate variability, the higher the better. In your resting heart rate, the lower the better. But you can't set a goal of always wanting to get a lower heart rate, right? Like you can't, like Joe has like his heart like barely beats. It like beats like 20 times a minute or whatever. You can't really get any lower than that. So what you pay attention after you have a long baseline of, say, a few weeks worth of your resting heart rate at night or first thing in the morning, you want to watch for spikes in the resting heart rate. Not necessarily how much lower can I get it, but if you've been and then you had a really hard training day and your resting heart rate is 70 and it's usually 50, that's something to pay attention to. And it's kind of combining that heart rate variability with the resting heart rate that gives you a more concrete answer to what did yesterday affect today. And so, because if you only look at heart rate variability, you might have an off reading. You might be unusually high and unusually low, but you could feel great. But if your heart rate is consistent, then like, okay, you can kind of throw that reading out. Maybe it was unnecessary. But if your heart rate is jacked higher than normal when you first wake up in the morning, and you have a lower heart rate variability than normal after you've, like I said, tracked a few weeks, okay, maybe it's time to back off, maybe do something a little bit lighter today, shift some of the training days around. And this is how, my goal is to make you more autonomous in how you're doing your training, because sticking to the training plan and being consistent is important, but listening to your body is really important. And what I've noticed this month, and I found really interesting, is my heart rate variability has just basically not deviated that much for a long time. I've been tracking it for 2 years, and there's not a lot of deviation. And then I took on the protein and water challenge this month, so making sure I get at least a gallon of water every day and hitting my protein goal every single day. And my heart rate variability is like in the 150s, which is very but getting to a consistent point now. And so that's kind of crazy for me, because it hasn't always been there. So things like nutrition, hydration go a long way, and then also sleep. And the last thing that you could track, this one I find a little bit harder unless you just want to actually use a thermometer. Taking your temperature when you first wake up in the morning and seeing if it's unusually high or unusually low. And so taking a look at that. And you can put these in an Excel document. There's not an app that's going to combine all these things. The Oura Ring does do all of them. The Whoop says it does body temperature, but it doesn't ever tell you what your body temperature is. So I don't know if they're factoring that in there somewhere or not. And then the last thing, this is not a wearable or metric, a wearable or something you do with your phone, but if you urinate first thing in the morning, pay attention to the color. So between those 4 things, if you're hitting your water goals, then you should be fine. But okay, where's my heart rate variability in relation to baseline? Where's my resting heart rate in relation to my baseline? What's my body temperature today in relation to my baseline? And then same with your urine color. If it's dark yellow or something unusual, even though you've had enough water, then those are all things that you need to start looking at, especially if you're starting to feel bad. And a lot of this stuff becomes intuitive over time. Like, I don't ever suggest that anyone gets like this, what I call a data collection hobby, where you're tracking all these metrics. But if you're tracking all these metrics and you're not changing anything about your training or your day-to-day life, then none of it really matters. You really shouldn't be tracking anything. But if you do track all these metrics and you see that it correlates with how you feel, like that should be your first metric. Like, wake up in the morning, and if you had to say like, you know what, I'm ready to train today, this is a good day, like mental energy is good, like let's get after it, then compare it to all those metrics and see how intuitive that you can be over time. Try to take that guess, try to take that self-assessment first in the morning, be like, you know what, today feels awesome, I'm going to crush it, and all your metrics are bad, well, that's unusual. Or if it's the other way around. So something to pay attention to. Yes, I completely agree with you, Josh. All right, so that's it, guys. If you have any questions about other wearables or devices, I might just not have experience with them. The 3 that I recommended are really solid. And yeah, those are the things that you should be paying attention to. If you guys have any more questions, just throw them in the chat. Let me know.